Friends, I have not, of course, been following the day-to-day contours of this struggle, but I have come here mainly to express my solidarity with you because I believe the idea of cutting seats, cutting admission intake is unthinkable in JNU. In fact, throughout the history of this university, the effort has been to increase the intake. This is the finest university we have in the country, and it is natural, therefore, that the benefits of this university should reach as many people as possible. In my own department, when we started an MA program, we used to offer admission in early 1970s to about 30 students. These days, we offer admission to at least 120 students. The whole idea of a university like this is actually to enlarge the intake as much as possible. If there is a UGC circular that there should be a curtailment of seats, then I would say that UGC circular goes against the dictates of the Indian Parliament. As you know, universities in India are set up in two different ways. One is through a legislation, either of the central government, that is a parliament for central universities, or state legislatures for state universities. The other is a private institution or some other institution may be recognized at a later stage by the UGC to be a deemed university. JNU was set up by an Act of Parliament. That Act of Parliament specifies that decisions regarding intake, decisions regarding the academic procedures are to be taken by the bodies of this university. The statutes of the university, the ordinances of the university clearly specify how these decisions are to be taken. If you have the UGC, which is a funding body, suddenly coming and saying that you have to take so many and this and that, then the UGC is clearly going against the dictates of the Indian Parliament. Therefore, that is illegal, that is unconstitutional, and the university administration must not, if that is the argument they are providing, must not accept that argument. It is a completely wrong argument. It is actually showing disrespect to the Indian Parliament, because the Parliament has clearly specified who are the bodies in charge of the academic decisions, including decisions regarding intake in this university. It is also against the interests of society because, as I just said, that this is the finest university we have. Now, the point is, therefore, the benefits of it must reach as many people as possible. And that is why the idea throughout the history of JNU has been to really expand admission. And this is, in fact, what has happened. But additionally, there is a further factor, namely, I believe it is against the intellectual life of the country. You know, it is very easy to set up a good MA teaching university. In fact, Indian universities, I believe, but certainly I'm talking about universities which are metropolitan, like Delhi University or Jadavpur or Calcutta and so on, provide, to my mind, perhaps the best MA degrees anywhere in the world. But they do so in order to provide students, the best of whom then go abroad. So they basically become a finishing school for American universities. And this is the way that most third world universities are, and most Indian universities are, the best of them. Okay, I mean, the bad ones, they're separate. But fundamentally, the highest level of achievement of Indian universities has been to become finishing schools for American or British universities. Now, JNU was an exception to that. In fact, the specificity of JNU in this country lies precisely in the fact that it is an exception to that. For the first time, you actually, I know I was a student in Delhi School of Economics, and you barely had one PhD thesis in 5 years. In fact, people used to beg PhD students to stay on. They would offer all kinds of inducements, but the best of them who were in a position to do PhD would prefer to go abroad. I'll tell you a story. One fine day, Professor Amartya Sen found that his best PhD student, his name was number 1 in the list of IAS admissions. He was just taken aback. So he called him. He said, this name, is it your name? He said, yes, sorry, sir. So he had taken the IAS exam and stood first in the exam, obviously a very bright student. So even Professor Amartya Sen could not really get hold of PhD students to teach. Now JNU was an exception to that. You really had a systematic atmosphere in which research was undertaken, and that's what actually differentiated this university from every other university. It's not very surprising, by the way, that for the first time you had JNU PhDs competing against foreign PhDs, even for faculty positions, not just in JNU, but even abroad. You had a situation normally, if you had a PhD from some American university and a PhD from an Indian university, foreign universities would not touch you with a barge pole when it comes to appointment. Forget foreign universities, even Indian universities would not touch you with a barge pole if it comes to appointments. They would always prefer the foreign degree holder compared to the Indian degree holder. And the basis for that was typically the PhD thesis done in Indian universities were not very good. But JNU broke all that. In my own department, I know that more than half of them are people who have done JNU PhDs, and they're as good as any PhDs anywhere. So the PhD atmosphere is essential. If we are going to have an intellectual life in this country, it's very important that the finest university must have a large number of research students. It is that scale. I mean, I have friends. I have friends. I have economist friends. I've got a very good senior Bangladeshi economist friend. He always tells me, your advantage is that you have got a scale of research, which we don't have. I mean, they have brilliant teachers and so on, brilliant students, but they just cannot manage that scale. Now, JNU has actually managed that scale because you have a large number of PhD and MPhil students. And what is more, to the extent those PhD and MPhil students then also take tutorials or meet with MS students and so on, it produces a great atmosphere. And I know that in my department and similarly in other departments, you have research student seminars, not organized by the faculty, by the students themselves, where they present each other's papers, So the point is that this is an atmosphere which has been built up over the years. This is a specificity of JNU, and it's a wonderful thing to defend because really, I'm an old man, I've taught all my life, I know that this is the achievement of the university, and anything that breaks that achievement is really disastrous, is bad for the intellectual life of the country, and consequently, I completely, wholeheartedly support you in your struggle. Thank you.